Hello guys, and welcome here to the Legacy IAS Academy. In today's lecture, we will be discussing all about the optional paper. So a lot of students have a lot of doubts with respect to what optional they should choose, and they do take into consideration certain criteria. So we will see on what basis sociology optional is one of the best optional to choose and why it is so much sought after optional. In addition to this, we will also see the syllabus of sociology optional. In fact, we will break it down to the micro level. That will help you make your decision even easier. At the same time, you will understand what all is in store for you in sociology optional. So let's understand the agenda for today's class. The agenda is about the first point, that is why sociology as an optional. Why sociology as an optional? Very important this to understand, specifically in the present time is what we will talk about. Then we will understand how sociology is an optional, why we should choose it, all that and this, and then we will talk about the syllabus of this optional paper, which we will take it up to the micro level. All right, so stay tuned. Let's get started with why sociology as an optional. Now, the first things first, of course, optional should be scoring in its own self. Why? Because the optional paper that is there, it is high scoring paper. These papers are high scoring, unlike generally your GS papers. However, the last year in GS4 also the marks were quite high, but optional is the one which is quite high scoring and you can score up to 300 plus. Right? Now, how sociology helps you to get 300 plus? That is because point number one, it is very concise. The syllabus is very concise. The syllabus of optional sociology is very concise. If I have to tell you conciseness, I would tell you with respect to two things. Number one, the length of the syllabus. Length of syllabus is quite less, or you can say small. The length is small, very less. If you are a beginner starting from scratch, have never touched sociology optional ever in your life, still you could finish off your course along with our classes within 4 months. Yes, it is that concise. Second, there is a huge amount of certainty in topics. Huge amount of certainty in topics. What do I mean by that? By that, I mean that there are certain topics from which a lot of questions would come, and that is almost a certainty. An example over here is that in sociology optional paper 1, you have 6 thinkers, 6 sociology thinkers, right? Now, there might be thinkers elsewhere also in other subjects also, but in this sociology optional, the 6 thinkers that are mentioned, it's not that you have to read them holistically, rather what all topics or subtopics that you have to read from those thinkers, that is also specifically given, and UPSC restricts itself with respect to only these things. Right. Now, what is the important point here? The important point here is that if you analyze the last 10, 15, 20 years of sociology optional paper, you will understand that close to, more than or equal to half the paper, that means more than equal to 125 marks in your optional paper 1 comes from the thinkers. Now, to give you a context, in optional, you have optional paper 1 and optional paper 2. Now, paper 1 is of 250 marks, paper 2 is of 250 marks. Out of this, almost 125 marks of thinkers, just the 6 thinkers come in the exam for sure. That is one thing. The second important thing of the same thinkers is that you can utilize the same thinkers in your paper 2, plus of course you can utilize the thinkers in paper 1 as well. Now, what is the difference between paper 1 and paper 2? paper 1 deals with Western sociology or Western sociologists, whereas paper 1 deals with Indian sociology. Right. Now in paper 1 you are getting direct half the paper from these thinkers, and the same thinkers you can use for the rest half of the paper, plus you can utilize these thinkers in paper 2 as well. Now for us Indians it becomes very easy to understand Indian sociology. Why? Because we are born and brought up in the society. So when you are born and brought up in the society, you are seeing society, you are going to school, colleges, you have families, relatives, friends. That is what is a part of society. And in sociology you will be studying exactly that. What is that? The society. The society is what you will study, which is known as sociology. So this paper you would have already known a lot about it. However, it does not stop there, of course. Just by knowing it, it does not stop. Why? Because you may understand the questions, you may understand what it is, but your answers would still be like generic answers. So you have to convert your Indian sociology answers, even if you know it already, into sociological answers, and that is where we come in. That is where we will train you to write sociological answers even for this paper, because what happens is this paper becomes quite easy. Since it becomes quite easy, students might have a tendency to write generic answers, but that will not work because the question levels are such and the answer level expected is of at least graduation or honors level. So you will have to write sociological answers, and all that will be covered in our live classes that will be starting from 27th of August 2025. So any one of you who wants to take sociology or has taken sociology as optional, you can enroll with us, as the batches are starting from 27, so you can join in before that. Now let's continue with the optional. So we have understood that in sociology the first thing is the conciseness of syllabus. So you have concise syllabus. Now, what is the other thing? Now, if you look at some other optionals, you may realize that in history a lot of GS is covered. Fair enough, but what happens is in history the syllabus is very vast. Here that is not the case. And generally with respect to sociology, we may not know that a lot of GS is also covering here as well. Yes, you heard me right. So what happens is it covers almost half of GS1. Yes, almost half of GS1. Now, how is that possible? So is in GS1 you have the subject of Indian society, which is also called, as you can call it, as social issues. Now, in the last few years there have been around 9 to 10 questions, 9 questions for sure in the last few years, which has been asked from Indian society in GS1. So of course it helps you to cover your GS1 paper. Half the GS1 paper is gone. But not just that, it is in fact more important to have sociology optional to actually answer this question, because if you look at the level of questions that are being asked in Indian society in GS1, it has considerably gone up in the last few years. They're asking questions on the lines of that. For example, the question is, in India, intercaste marriages have increased, but the same is not true for interreligious marriages. Discuss. Now, this is going to be tough even in sociology optional, but they are asking that in Indian society paper of GS1, Indian society subject of GS1. So Indian society has become quite difficult, and people who do not have sociological background will find it very difficult to write an answer here. So it helps you in that as well. Now let's move on to the next point. The next point is that of the essay. Now essay, another high scoring subject. So in essay also your score has to be high, and if you look at an essay, there are essays on social issues, there are essays on women empowerment, women empowerment, there are essays on gender equality, there are essays on discrimination, there are essays on various other things, all of which gets covered in sociology optional. Now, these are also the very favorite themes of topic for UPSC. So if you look at the past 30 years of essay paper, there have been total 15 themes, and these are the topmost themes. If you talk about women, gender equality, etc., 15 to 20 essays have come from this topic. That means almost every year an essay is coming, and if you club all these topics, you should be almost certain to get minimum of one essay on these themes, is what I'm saying. So what happens when you get one essay over here, another 125 marks is covered over here. Plus in GS1, almost half the paper, it's not completely half, 9 questions, a lot of them are 10 markers. So at least around 100 marks of questions you can get it from here. So 225 marks worth of questions are again coming from sociologically related themes. That is what makes sociology such a favorite of the aspirants. Now, it does not end over here. Now, the fourth thing we will look at over here is the type of syllabus sociology has. Yes, that's important. Why it is important is because there are certain subjects which are completely factual. Too much of facts, you have to mug up a lot. History is one such example. Now, there can be a subject which is quite analytical and quite dynamic in nature. So some students are scared of the current affairs, so they may not take it. Now, sociology here is a sweet or an optimum mix of static and dynamic. It hits the sweet spot very nicely. It's an optimum mix of static and dynamic portion. Now, because it is a mix of static and dynamic, that means it has static part in it. So what happens is, since there is a huge amount of static part in sociology optional, you can understand that if you solve just last 5 years PYQs, you can expect more than half the paper directly from it, right? So what happens, you are able to guess what questions will be asked, what type of questions will be asked, what are the themes on which it will be asked. So all you have to, the practice also becomes very simple. So you will have to practice. Of course, there will be test series that will be provided here at Legacy IAS Academy. In addition to that, we will also do the previous year question answer writing practice. And if we do that, half of paper 1 and half of paper 2 can be easily guessed by doing just the last 5 years question paper, right? So that helps a lot. Secondly, there is to some extent a mix of dynamic, means current affairs as well, but it's not completely current affairs oriented. The current affairs that is involved here is not in the sense that you should know it. If you don't know it, you cannot answer it. No, it's not to that extent. The current affairs here involved is sometimes the questions could be direct, which is analytical, and many a times, even if it is not asked, even if it is a static question, you can choose to give current affairs related examples. That is on your choice. So you need not scared about the involvement of some amount of current affairs in sociology optional, because that is dependent on you as to what current affairs related thing you have to use, what you don't have to use. That will be majorly as per your own choice. So if you are aware of some government scheme, or you are aware about a certain thing, you are aware about certain things that is being done, you are aware about certain current affairs related situation in India with respect to, let's say, women participation in labor, you give that statistics, you mention that in that particular answer. It's not hard and fast. The more, the optimum amount you use, the better marks you will get. So that is the importance of it hitting the sweet spot. So these are the 4 most important things which you can understand what makes sociology such an amazing optional. Now, in addition to this, if I have to add a few more advantages that may not be related to the optional, but that would be related to what we will provide you over here. Hear me out here. So what happens, the issue with optional is it is at time vast, but here it is concise. But still, you will have to refer to, you will be asked to refer to 10, 15, 20 different standard book sources. But if you are studying from us, you don't have to buy any source whatsoever. So what you will be provided with, a complete book. Now, this is very important. That's why I'm mentioning it's not about telling the offering, but telling you the importance of book that will be provided. Now, this book that will be provided to you, it will be so comprehensive that whatever pointers are mentioned here, you will have to refer to 10, 15 different sources in order to match the level or the horizon or the scope of the pointers that we have provided here. This is a game changer. So this book for you will be a game changer. If you can read this completely and understand this, of course, there will be lectures which will help you understand. If you can do this and just write the test series of Legacy IAS Academy, that should be more than enough. In addition to that, if you want to refer the sources, of course, we do provide the sources as well, what all you should refer, and they are freely available as well. But this book is going to be a game changer. In the market, you will not be finding any such book. In fact, if you inquire, you will get to know this person's paper 1 book is good, this person's paper 2 book is good. So someone is good in paper 1, someone in paper 2, someone half of this, half of that. The syllabus at times are not covered, but all those issues that are there with the optional are going to be taken care of. I hope that's clear. Now let's come on to the more interesting point of this class, that is the syllabus of sociology optional. So sociology optional, of course, like every other optional, is divided into 2 papers. One is optional paper 1 and the other is paper 2, right? Now, as I have mentioned to you before, paper 1 deals with Western sociology, whereas paper 1 deals with Western sociology, whereas paper 2 deals with the Indian sociology. Right. Now, of course, since we have lived our life as an Indian, this will be more close to us, or we might have lived it, but even this is not that difficult. In fact, when you read this, you will realize how this can be implemented on the Indian society as well. So this is the classification of our paper. Of course, both the papers are of 250 marks. Both are of 250 marks, no doubt about it. And also in both of them, what happens is you are basically given 8 questions. So under this section A have 4 questions. A total of 8 questions are there. So under section A, 4 questions. Under section B, again 4 questions are there. Now, in this point to be remembered is question 1 is compulsory. You have to solve it. And question here in section B, 4 questions are there. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 6, 7, 8 are here. So question 5 is compulsory. And these questions generally are short notes. These questions generally are short notes. So out of a total of 8 questions, you have to solve 5 questions. You have to solve 5 questions. Now question 1 and 5 are compulsory. So you are left with 3 more questions. Now you cannot solve those 3 questions all from section A or all from section B. Minimum 2 questions of each section has to be solved. That means an additional question from here and additional question from here has to be solved. So total 4 questions are now done. Now the 5th question can be any of section A or section B questions. I hope that is absolutely clear. Right, so it can be here or here. So this is how you solve it. Now the short notes that are asked, since these are compulsory, becomes very important. So specific short notes, answer writing, in fact notes and everything will be provided. Why? Because lot of short notes keep on repeating itself. So when you know that every year this particular theme would be there, so why not have sort of to some extent pre-prepared kind of an answer, not the complete model answer that you're mugging it up, but what to write, what not to write. That understanding has to be there so that your answers are top notch. So that is the approach we will also have in order to excel in sociology optional paper, right? Now let's come on to the breakdown of the syllabus. So first we will take up sociology optional paper 1. Sociology optional paper 1. Now sociology optional paper 1, of course, as I said, it is Western sociology, right? So let's talk about what all the things are there in this, right? So the very first thing in this is sociology, the discipline. So the first thing that is talked about in this is sociology, the discipline. Now, what do we understand in this? In this, we will understand what is sociology. Is sociology a science or not? What, where, or where, or how did sociology origin? What were the reasons behind it? In reasons, we will look at the Renaissance period, the scientific revolution, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, so on and so forth is what we will see. So in this, you talk about what is sociology. Then is it a science? Now, I might be writing the small questions, but you know what? Is sociology a science? There is a question that has been asked in UPSC for 10 marks. Write a short note on sociology as science. Then you will understand the what led to the development of sociology. So you can talk about emergence of sociology. Emergence of sociology. Then you will talk about the scope of the subject. The different scope of the subject. Right. So these are the things is what we will see. And one more important micro topic here we will see is sociology and common sense. A very popular question. Write a short note on sociology and common sense. Write a short note on scope of sociology. Write a short note on emergence of sociology. Is sociology a science? Is science? Write a short note on sociology as science. These micro topics, interestingly, are also directly asked as questions. So when you are studying, it is as good as studying 5-6 questions and their answers. That's it. This is how it's simple. We will make it for you. So this was the first chapter, that is sociology, the discipline. Next is sociology as science. In sociology as science also, we'll see an interesting debate wherein some thinkers say that sociology is not a science, whereas others say that it is. So we'll understand all that over here. In this, we will understand science. What is science? Scientific method. What is scientific method? And its critique. So we'll understand what is science, what is its scientific method, and its critique. So when we understand what is science, what is scientific method, then only we will be able to deduce whether sociology is a science or not. Then we will look at different kinds of theories in sociology. So positivist theories and non-positivist theories. Now, under positivist, you have positivism is one of the theory. Under non-positivist, you have a lot of theories. One of them, for example, let's say phenomenology. So, what is the positivism theory? Positivism theory basically says that you should study human being society also like the positive science, or like biology, or like physics, chemistry, right? Physics, chemistry, maths you study wherein 2 + 2 = 4. In chemistry, when you boil, when you heat water up to 100 degrees Celsius of standard temperature and pressure, at standard temperature and pressure, it boils, right? So they say here also, basically in those science you study very objectively, Positivism also talks about studying very objectively. Why objectively? Because subjectivity cannot be studied is what positivism says. But the non-positivists argue no, just because we cannot study subjectivity right now does not mean we should ignore it. We should take into consideration the subjectivity of a person as well. What does that mean? That means that, okay, for example, if one person beats the other one time, the other person may not respond. The next time they beat it, again they don't respond. But the third time this person may respond. Now what has happened? Every time the action was same, but the reaction was different. Why? Because each individual thinks differently. It's not like water that if you heat it up at 100 degrees Celsius at standard temperature and pressure, it will always boil. No, absolutely not. We are humans. We have subjectivity, biasness, and our own free will, because of which our actions would change in the same circumstances on different occasions. That is why we need to take into consideration subjectivity as well. So these are the interesting things that you will be studying over here. Other things would include fact, neutrality, etc. What is neutrality? What is objectivity? Fact, objectivity, and neutrality, etc. is what we will study over here. Right? Next, once we are done with this, then we move on to quite an important chapter. In this, a minimum 120 marker question comes. So around 20-30 marks questions do come. At times 20-20 marker questions also come. The third one is research, basically research methodology. So in research methodology, what you do is you actually understand how these researches are conducted. Research methodology or method and analysis. Right. So in this you will understand how the sociologists actually conduct the research. How do they do the research? What should a research include? Right. So for a research, first there needs to be thesis. Then the experiment will be conducted. Then either those theses are confirmed or not. Right. So if they don't get converted, it becomes opposite. So there is antithesis. After knowing it, we come up with new thesis, and it keeps on going on. This is the method of research. Then for researching, you also use various tools. For example, sampling is the tool. If you want to do any sociological research wherein you want to ask people why people commit suicide or why people do a particular thing, if you are interviewing them, you cannot interview all the entire population, so you have to take a small sample. So sampling will be there. Then methods of research can be interview, can be questionnaire, can be survey. Then what will happen is in sampling there will be different types of sampling: random sampling, snowball sampling. All these different types of research methods is what we will see in this particular chapter. Now this chapter is generally not taught in the UPSC classes. In various institutes they will not even teach you this chapter, but this chapter still holds value, of course. Why? Because questions are being asked, so you have to teach it. And specifically because at times implementation based questions may be asked. For example, if you want to do a survey of a supermarket, etc., what method will you use? So that thought process the student needs to start thinking on their own. For that, the classes become very important. Nothing in UPSC is skippable. If people are doing that, avoid those things. So we will do this. Then we move on to the most important chapter of sociology, entire sociology paper, on basis of which more than almost, or in fact at times even more than half the paper one is asked, and that is the fourth one, that is thinkers. And under thinkers you have total 6 thinkers is what we will see. Right. So under thinkers you will be given 6 thinkers. Based just on those 6 thinkers, close to half the paper is asked in UPSC. First one is Karl Marx. Second is Emile Durkheim. Then you have Max Weber, right? Then you have Talcott Parsons. Now, in this also, in these 6 thinkers also, there are precedents in the sense that there are some thinkers on which more amount of questions is asked. We'll see that as well. Then you have R.K. Merton, and then finally G.H. Mead. So these 3 thinkers are the most important: Karl Marx, Emil Durkheim, Max Weber. Then comes this, and then last is this. In R.K. Merton and G.H. Mead, you might just get 10 marker question, or maybe at times 20. In Karl Marx, Emil Durkheim, Max Weber, you will definitely get 20 mark questions, plus maybe at times another 20, 10, 10, 10, 20, both markers would be there. That's why 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 is getting over here, and then the remaining 20 here. Parsons at time can fetch you 10 or 20 marks. It also becomes quite important, but these are the most important thinkers. These are the first 3 are the most important thinkers, but don't take Talcott Parsons also lightly. At times 20 marker questions are asked on him as well. The last 2 thinkers are not that prevalent if you look at the trend, but the thing is 20 mark question on any topic can be asked, including them as well. So you don't know whether this year they would ask a 20 marker or not. So you don't have to take any one of them lightly, because UPSC has already made us so easy for us that they have given just this 6 thinkers. Not just that, in the 6 thinkers, they have also said what you have to study. You don't have to study them completely. You just have to study their specific theories. For example, in Karl Marx, you have to study historical materialism, mode of production, alienation, and class struggle. Historical materialism, mode of production, alienation, and class struggle. In fact, historical materialism and mode of production are also related. In historical materialism, he he traces the history of humankind using the mode of production. So it is similar, things are interlinked with each other, which makes it even more easy. Then here in Emil Durkheim, you have division of labor. Then you have suicide. Before suicide, we will talk about the social facts, the suicide. Another very interesting thinker, if you talk about his concept of social facts. So let me give you an example here. If I may ask you that, do all of you, when you go to a wedding or an event like that of celebration, do you wear the attire, the clothes of your own choice, or do you not? Now, a lot of people are going to say that, yes, I wear it out of my choice. Yes, it's my choice what to wear, what not. Emil Durkheim says, no, you don't wear it based on your choice. How is that possible? He says that you might have around, let's say, 100 different attires to choose from, but you shortlist the 10 only which you decide are worthy of going to an event, and you choose it from this. You choose it from these 10 and think that you are making the choice. But who chose from 100 and made it 10? It is the society. The society which existed before us and the society which is going to exist even after us has already decided what kind of dress to be worn in a wedding. It has to be your best of dresses, suits, coats, this, that. You might not as well be wearing a football shorts and a jersey in a wedding, right? So who has decided that? You think you have, but no, society has already taken a decision for you, and from that is where you decide. So that is a concept of social facts which talks about it is external. It is the society that is deciding for you. It is external to you. That means you cannot control it, right? So these are the interesting things that we are going to see over here. Then you have suicide, plus you will also talk about religion and society over here. Now, very interestingly, religion and society is also a chapter another chapter in both paper 1 and paper 2. So a lot of that gets covered here as well as there. It is an overlap which makes the syllabus even more concise. Then next you have Weber. Now in Weber you will look at social action theory, right? So his social action theory, then his Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism is a concept on which every now and then questions are asked. Then you will look at authority and power, and as I said, Protestant ethics and spirit of capitalism. All this and much more is what you will see in Max Weber. Now in Talcott Parsons you have social systems, pattern variables. See, it is just the names that they have given like this. The theories are quite simple. Now R.K. Merton has, now these two have the least number of topics, but at times 20 marker is asked from them also. So here R.K. Merton gives you latent and manifest function. Latent, one is manifest function. Manifest function is the function which is visible explicitly. Latent is something which is hidden. For example, if I give you a topic of, let's say, Maternity Amendment Act, in which the government has now increased the leaves from 13 weeks of paid leaves to 26 weeks of paid leaves. Now the manifest function is very clear. All the positives here are the manifest function, which you can clearly see that the person who needs it gets a higher benefit, so that's a positive for them. But latent function is not easily directly evident. It has to be derived, it's hidden, you have to do more research. What is that latent function in that? The latent function is that since now the number of leaves would be higher, the companies would be reluctant to hire female employees, which might lead to lower workforce participation of the females. So this will be a negative externality and be known as latent function. I hope that's clear. So these are the interesting, the names might be okay, pattern variables, this, that, but the concepts are quite interesting and quite simple, and you can give your own examples. All the examples also in the class will be given to you so that you can write them, modify it if you want, or write them as it is in your answers to get those maximum marks. Then you will have conformity, deviance, reference group over here, and GH Mead talks about self and identity. Self and identity talks about how an individual and their personality is formed. Now this, just this gives you half the paper of sociology optional paper 1. But of course there are 6 more topics in paper 1 itself. Let's quickly run through them. So the 5th one, now this is also quite important. It will help you a lot in paper 2 as well. That is stratification and mobility. Stratification and mobility. Stratification basically means the division of the people in different levels, right? High caste, low caste, and then the middle caste, or high class, low class, then the middle classes. So that's the differentiation of the society into different strata. And then when someone from low level wants to go to a higher level, that is known as mobility. This is upward mobility. In the same manner, someone from above can come to the down or the lower level. This will be known as downward mobility. So then we will understand, this is what is mobility. We'll understand mobility, its type, how it happens, how can someone go from up to down, and how can someone go from bottom to up, so on and so forth. Now the next one, that is number 6, is work and economic life. See, now here also, even though it is paper 1 Western sociology, you will understand that the topics are quite known to us, right? Work and economic life, the unorganized sector, the organized sector, all those things are discussed over here. And then the 7th one, politics and society. Politics and society, the different theories of power that are there, the different ways to put pressure on the politicians, the different pressure groups, concept, etc. will be discussed in that. And then 8th one, very interesting again, religion and society. Now, interestingly, let me tell you, these and various chapters are going to repeat in paper 2 as well. Which does it what? Which makes the syllabus even more concise. It cannot get more concise than this. So here in religion and society, you will have the theories of religion, the origin of religion, how, what are the theories, what do they say with respect to the origin of religion, all those things would be talked about. And then you have 9 systems of kinship. Now same chapter again would be there in paper 2 also. The name would be systems of kinship in India. That's it. So here in paper 1 you would be understanding all the concepts, this, that. All you have to do is apply paper 1 in paper 2 to get good marks. The syllabus is very, very less. Alright. So system of kinship in India. First you talk about the family, then you talk about marriage. So we will define, then you talk about the types of marriage. When you talk about family, there are types of family. So this is very interesting, right? And this is something we live in, we are a part of. So you will be very easily able to relate these things. And the 10th chapter will be based on change. So it will be social change in modern society. Social change in modern society. This talks about what is social change first thing. What are the agents of social change? What are the instruments of social change? How can social change can come? All those things, education, science, all those things lead to change. All those things we will be discussing over here. So this concludes your paper 1. And remember, there are certain topics, make a note of them. They will repeat. When they repeat in paper 2, right now I'm going to tell you, make a note of it. So that reduces your number of chapters that are there. Hope that's clear. Now let's move on to paper 2. Now paper 2 would be even more familiar because here it's completely Indian society. So the first part of paper 2, this paper 2 is basically divided. So first part of paper 2 is Introduction to Indian Society. Introduction. It's divided into 3 parts, A, B, C. A is Introduction to Indian Society. Introduction to Indian Society, right? Under this, 2 things are there. Number 1, perspective on the study. Perspective on this. Perspective means the different approaches different thinkers have. So first is perspective on the study of Indian society. So on what perspective, based on what perspective the Indian society is being studied? Is it functionalism? Is it Indology, Westernism? What all it is what we will study over here. There are different perspectives. There have been foreigners who have studied Indian society based on their own perspective, and then there are Indians who are going to study India based on Indology and going to criticize the foreigners for having a hidden agenda against Indian society. So all that debate also is what we are going to see over here. And then the next is impact of colonial rule. Impact of colonial rule on the Indian society. So this is what we'll study in part A, that is Introduction to Indian Society. Now the part B talks about the social structure of India. Part B talks about the social structure of India. Now in this we will study the agrarian structure, the rural agrarian structure, the urban structure, all these different kinds of structure that are there in the Indian society. This is the first one, is the rural and agrarian social structure. Rural and agrarian social structure. The second one is the caste system, which itself is a structure in Indian society. So caste system is what we will look at. A lot of questions are asked on this, the caste system. Then you have not just the caste, but then you also have to study the tribal communities. So next is the tribal communities. What are the important thing here will be the definitional problem. means the question as to who is a tribal, that itself is an issue to decide who is a tribal. So what decides who a tribal is? Then what policies should we have in order with respect to them? Should we integrate them in the Indian society, or should we keep them completely isolated? So there are different approaches. What we will see, the approaches of the Westerners, for example, Barrier Elvin, who talked about a human zoo, where, with respect to G.S. Ghurye, who talked about integrating them, and then we will see what approach did actually India take. I hope that's clear. Right. Now next is the social classes in India. So in this only, the social classes, in India. I hope that's clear. Social classes in India means, now this is based on caste. Now in tribal communities, we'll see how can we define them, right? This is based on region. This social classes in India is based on the class, that means the economy, the type of economy that is present, and hence in this you will have the agrarian class, the industrial class, the middle class. How did the middle class origin? All those things is what we will discuss. And then in this social structure only we will continue, and in this you will have the fifth one, that is systems of kinship in India. Systems of kinship in India. Now remember, kinship system is already done in paper 1. Here with respect to India it is given. Then the next one is also done in the previous paper, but here again it's with respect to India, that is religion and society. Right. So this completes our B part of the second paper. I hope that's clear. Now the last part, that is the C part, is about social changes in India. So what has been repeated so far? So far this has been repeated and this has been repeated. So remember, 2 topics are repeated, but of course in the Indian context. Now let's move on to the C part, that is social changes. So here we'll be talking about the different movements, the different changes. Let us see social changes in India. Right, social changes in India is what we will discuss. Now this has around 7 subparts to it. The very first part is vision of social change in India. Vision of social change in India. Now remember, when here we are talking about the social change, we are talking about improving the people, right? Improving the people with respect to their economy situation, their status, their empowerment, so on and so forth. The next is rural agrarian. See, rural agrarian, huge amount of disconnect, or you can say discrepancy, or rural urban divide is there. We have always tried to close that gap, right? So we'll here we'll study rural urban transformation in India. Of course in India it's India related paper, rural urban transformation. And then the next is industrialization and urbanization. Now what makes these topics interesting is we trace them to their origin. How did industrialization start? When did it start? Why did urbanization start? What was the reason for it? What is the similarity of industrialization and urbanization? What are the differences of industrialization and urbanization? What is the present situation? What social issues do they create? All this and much more is what we will see. The next thing is politics and society. Politics and society. Now remember, the same topic has been covered in paper 1 as well. So this is again covered. Next is very important, social movements in India. Social movements in India. Right. Now, in social movements in India, there will be women movement, environment movement, caste-based movement, class-based movement, different movements will be there, and that is what we will be studying in this particular chapter. So, if you talk about the social movements, for example, you will have first the environment movement. Now, what are environment movements? Environment movement is the one that is taking place with respect to environment. Now, in this, you will understand that Chipko movement, Apiko movement, where environment movement, but many argue that they are not environment movement. Why? Because the people here, it is argued that the people in certain environment movements are trying to save the environment because that helps their class situation, that means that helps their financial situation, that is the source of their income. So they are not trying to save the environment just because for the sake of environment or avoiding its degradation, but they are trying to save because their jobs will be saved. So these kind of criticisms will also come. So we will have to understand whether these movements are actually environment movement or some other kind of movement wrapped in the environment movement cloak. Right, so things will get quite interesting. Then you have the women's movement. Now, this topic was not there in paper 1, it's in paper 2, so it is with respect to India, of course. So we'll see the different types of movement in women movement in India, but also we will contrast it with respect to the Western society. How do women movement in India differ from the women movement of the Western world? What was the difference? A simple difference, if I have to tell you, is that in Western world, the women movement were led by women. Now in India, that has as such not happened. Not happened in the sense that the women movement are as such, you can say, led by, historically, if you look at during the British rule, even after that, they are led by men. So that is a concern over here. I hope that's clear. Then you have the backward class movement. Now remember one thing, things can overlap as well. How can things overlap? For example, the backward classes, women can come forward. Why? Because they are from the backward classes, so they will face issue, plus they are women, so they may face another issue. That's a double whammy, double issue might be faced. So there can be an overlap as well. This and much more is what we will see. So backward classes and Dalit movements. Backward classes and Dalit movements. Plus, then you have the peasants and farmers movement. Now, many a times you may use peasants and farmers interchangeably, but here there is a distinction of peasants and farmers movement. So we'll understand what makes it different. How can we differentiate a peasant movement from a farmer? How can we differentiate a peasant from a farmer? So on and so forth is what we will see. And then you have the ethnicity and identity movement. The ethnicity and identity movement. So what is ethnicity and why are people having a social movement based on ethnicity, so on and so forth is what we will study. Next, sixth over here would be population dynamics. Population dynamics. In population dynamics, you will have the population size, the growth, the demographic dividend, the old age, the issues with the old age, all those things, the various components of population growth, the birth, the death, the birth rate, death rate, migration, in migration, out migration, the impact of migration on the area from where people are migrating out, or the effect of migration on the receiving area, the area which receives that population of migration. All that is what we will see. Plus we will also see the emerging issues. Emerging issues in this. So emerging issues with respect to population, for example, aging, for example, sex ratio, for example, neonatal mortality rate, infant mortality rate, child mortality rate, then you have maternal mortality rate. All these are issues because these are what? These are death that is happening. And then reproductive health, right? So all the population related thing is what we will see in the sixth one, that is population dynamics. And the last one over here is challenges of social transformation. The next is challenges of social transformation. See, we are striving for social transformation with in a positive manner. That means we want to improve, we want to do better, we want to ensure no one is left out of the benefits. We want inclusive growth, right? All this is what we want. We want to avoid gender discrimination, caste based discrimination, any discrimination that might be there. However, when you try to do that, there might be certain challenges, right? So for example, here we'll study about the crisis of development. Yes, you heard it right, the crisis of development. Now development is a positive thing, but what crisis can it lead to? So we'll understand the crisis of development. Then we'll talk about poverty, deprivation, inequality. Now deprivation and poverty and all will look the same, but they are not. So what is the difference? What is poverty? The inability of a person to meet their basic needs of food, clothes and shelter. Deprivation is what? In that you might not necessarily be poor, but your reference group. Remember in R.K. Merton we will read about reference group. That logic we will use here and understand. If your reference group is doing well, you will feel more deprived. If your reference group is not doing that well, you will not feel that much deprived. So how deprived do you feel or not? Of course it is dependent on your own situation, but it is a comparative phenomena wherein it depends with which reference group you are comparing yourself, which will determine the degree of deprivation you might face. And of course then we will look at inequality as well. Next, under this we will look at violence against women. Very important, again a big challenge in social transformation, violence against women, because half the population is what? Women. So you are not caring about the half the population, so how can you grow? So that is why women, violence against women, right? So this is the third. In this there are three more. Next is caste and conflict. So basically we will talk about the conflict that happens in the caste, right? Caste system we have already seen. Here we will take up the conflict, and with respect to the conflict, the current scenario, etc., examples is what we will take. Then after caste you will also have ethnic conflict, etc. All the other conflict, for example ethnic conflict, communalism, all those things. Communalism, religious revivalism, all this and much more is what we will see here. And the last thing is illiteracy and disparities in education. Illiteracy and disparities in education, right? So these are the challenges. Now, very interestingly, remembering the syllabus also helps. If you remember a syllabus, let's say there's a short note on challenges, write a short note on challenges of India's social transformation. You can use these pointers and give examples with respect to them to write in your answers. So that is the beauty of sociology. You can use sociology syllabus itself to write the answer. So what is the hindrance in India's development? You can mention all this, right? Word for word. Of course, you will not just write that pointers, you will have to write it in sentences and you will have to give examples. But if you remember the syllabus, even a question which might look very simple, generic, you don't have to write it generically, you have to use sociological terms. So remembering the syllabus helps you to make it sociological, make your answer sociological. So just this, yes, that's it. We have covered the entire syllabus and also listed the subtopics under them. This is what your sociology syllabus is all about. It is a very concise syllabus. The questions can be deduced, or you can easily predict at least half of the paper. If you solve the last 5 years, you will be in a good position to estimate what questions would be asked. But even then, you don't even have to, because in the class when we will be teaching you, what will happen is all the concepts will be cleared, the notes will be provided to you, everything will be in front of you. All you have to do is come, attend the class, do as we say, write your answers, get it checked, attempt all the tests in the test series that are there. If you just do this, you don't have to do anything else for sociology optionals. So in Legacy IAS Academy, we will be starting our sociology optional on 27th of August 2025. So make sure that you are enrolled before this date so that you don't miss even a single class.